welcome you to I think our first
Just
ever.
a reminder, today's conference is being recorded.
Sorry, I think this is our first ever meeting of Whitestone Council entirely by teleconference.
Sheridan.
What I'd like to do at the beginning is before we get started is just give you a little bit of instruction about how this is going to work. I know this is a new thing for all of us, and it's a little bit of an experiment, but we're going to, fortunately, we have a relatively simple agenda today. It's a special meeting, actually, that we called to deal just with three items, one of which is a closed item at the end of the meeting. So if I could just first talk a little bit about the rules for being on a teleconference. First thing I'm going to ask everyone to do is to mute your phones. And if you have a cell phone, the easiest way to do that is to press the mute button on the screen of your cell phone. Be careful when you do this, when you mute and unmute, that you don't hit the disconnect button and disconnect yourself from the call. This is absolutely important to prevent the call from being interrupted by background noise. People shuffling papers, dogs barking, whatever else is going on in your place where you're calling from. Now, I can still hear noise in the background, so I know there are people on the call who have not muted their phones. Please do that right now. If you don't have a cell phone with a mute button, you can press *6 on your keypad, and that will toggle you in and out of the call. You can still hear everything, but my advice to
Mayor
those
Comrie,
of you
it's CAO Henry here. Sorry to interrupt. I just want to let you know that Councillor Lamb is having difficulty connecting, so he's going to continue to try.
Yes, the problem is that the circuits are a lot of the toll-free circuits in our telephone network are overloaded. I had to dial 3 or 4 times to get through myself. So if you're in that situation, you can't hear me, I'm sure, but people should just keep trying, and hopefully they'll. What we're going to do in just a moment before we start is to have a roll call, so we make sure that we have everybody who's supposed to be on the call, all the councillors, make sure we have a quorum and all of those kinds of things. We would normally do that by just looking around, right, in a face-to-face meeting. But so just a couple of other suggestions. As I said earlier, this is kind of the first of a bit of an experiment, and we're doing a very simple meeting today. We're just holding it by telephone. There isn't any video component to the call. So everybody who needs to participate will have seen the materials we're going to cover. I believe that they are posted on the website, and so if you're a member of the public who is on the phone, you should at least have an agenda there that you can look at. So it is easier if you have, and the audio quality is better if you have either, if you have a Bluetooth headset, I guess. That way you don't have to keep holding the phone up. But if you are speaking, please make sure that you're speaking right into the microphone on your phone or into your headpiece. And it does make it easier if you're just kind of listening most of the time. If you've got earbuds for your phone, you may want to use those. But anyway, as we go forward in the foreseeable future, we will be having meetings electronically, and we will get a little bit more sophisticated probably the next time around, which will be on the Monday, the 6th of April. And at that meeting, hopefully we will have some of our materials will be available for people to see via computer. That's assuming that that where you're calling from, you have sufficient bandwidth to do video. So the audio is easier. It doesn't require the same amount of internet bandwidth. Anyway, the basic procedure for today's meeting will be we will do a roll call right now to make sure that everybody is on the call, and so we know. And after I have called for the counselors and staff, I will provide an opportunity for any members of the public to identify themselves, and I ask you to do that by simply unmuting your phone, saying your name clearly so that we can get it for the record, and then remuting your phone. And then we will approve the agenda. We will have we have the 2 items that are in the public meeting agenda. When that is over, I will ask everyone to disconnect and hang up, and the members of council will call back in using a different conference code into a closed session to deal with a closed session matter, which you can also see on the agenda. So that's the proceeding for today. Let's start with the roll call. Councillor Lamb, have you made it on yet? I don't hear him, so we'll keep. Councillor Gorham Matthews.
I'm here.
Thank you, Beth. Councillor Joe McEwen.
Joining conference.
Joe. So which Joe was that just joined the conference? Was that Joe Lamb?
Joe Lamb, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Joe. I'm just in the middle of roll call. Sorry you had trouble getting in. I know I had the same thing. I had to call a few times.
Yeah, okay.
I'm just going down the list. So far we have we have you, Councillor Lamb, Councillor Gorham Matthews, myself. I've just came to Councillor McEwen, and I'm waiting to see if he's on the line.
Okay.
And I don't hear him. What about Councillor Woods? Are you on the line?
Yep, I'm here. Do you hear me now, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Joe, thank you very much. We hear you.
Okay, Joe McEwen.
Yes, Joe McEwen. Is Councillor Woods on the line?
Yes.
Thank you, Brian. Now, I heard our clerk, Michelle Hendry, a minute ago. You're on, Michelle?
Yes, I'm here.
On. Bob Whitman, are you on the call?
Yes, I'm here, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So we'll see who else. Patricia Allen, are you on the call?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you, Pat. Judy Mines, are you on?
Yes, I am. I'm here.
Judy Mines.
And I thought I heard Brian Sheridan earlier. Brian, are you on?
Present, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Brian. Are there any other staff on the phone that I have missed?
No.
Sounds like that's a no. Could we just get, I did hear a couple of names that sounded like folks calling in from who are members of the public. Could I just ask you to unmute your phone and say your name, please, so we know?
Judy and Larry Sharp.
Okay, thank you. Who else have we got?
Mr. Mayor, our CEMC has also arrived.
Sorry, that was Kathy has arrived. Did I get that? Kathy Whitman?
Yes.
Thank you, Kathy. I'll add your name to the.
Roger.
Are there any other members of the public who've called in?
Huh? I think so. He didn't acknowledge, but I think so.
Okay, can I ask then, once again, can I ask all of you to mute your phones unless you are speaking? I can still hear background noise that is coming from somebody who's in front of an open mic. Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much. So we will. We now have all the counselors, and so we have a quorum, and we have our CAO clerk, who, of course, is necessary by law for us to have a meeting. So I'm going to call the meeting to order, and I'm going to ask counselors if they have any disclosure of pecuniary interest for today's meeting. If I don't hear anything, I'll assume that the answer is no to that one. The next item that we have on the agenda, the next item, it is on the agenda, but we have to approve the agenda. So I'm looking for a motion to the effect that whereas members of council have been presented with the agenda for this meeting, be it resolved that the agenda for this special meeting be adopted as presented. Could I have a councillor move and a councillor second this motion, please?
I'll move it, Joe Lamb.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lamb. Seconded by?
I'll second. Joe McEwen.
Councillor McEwen seconds. Thank you. Any discussion about the agenda? So what we're going to do then for voting, just to make sure that we catch everybody, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the names of the counselors and ask them to say yes or in favor, or no if they're not in favor, so that we can, in effect, what we're doing is recording the vote just to make sure that we don't miss anybody. So that's going to be our procedure for the votes that we take. So, Madam Clerk, can I ask you to just call the names one by one? And
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Gorham Matthews.
Is this to approve the agenda, to vote to approve it?
Yes,
it is
the adoption
to
of the
approve the
agenda.
Okay. So yes, in favor.
Councillor Joe Lamb.
Yes.
Councillor Joe McEwen.
Yes.
And Councillor Brian Woods.
yes.
And Mayor George Comrie.
Yes. So thank you. That motion is carried. I'm doing what I do in the face-to-face meetings. I'm filling out the little sheet here and just capturing it. But the clerk is also capturing it. And as you heard at the beginning, those of you who are on the proceedings of this meeting are being recorded just as they would be if we have a face-to-face meeting. So they will be available in due course for the public to listen to. All right, then. We can now move to item number 4, which is bylaws, a bylaw, specifically a bylaw amendment. And the purpose of what we're doing here is is to amend our existing procedure bylaw to allow for electronic meetings like this one. And I believe that the councillors are all aware of this, but the government of Ontario passed emergency legislation in the middle of last week in order to permit us to do this. And one of the things that the emergency legislation allows us to do is to have a meeting to amend our procedure bylaw if we have to in order to have electronic meetings. So we're actually not breaking any rules at the moment. And but what we want to do is to make an amendment that is basically the minimum necessary to accommodate the conduct of these virtual meetings, these electronic meetings, and it will remain in place once we make this amendment. We will leave this the way it is for the duration of the provincially declared emergency, and I guess any emergency that we might declare locally if we get to the point where we think we need to do that. But in any case, as some of you know, there is an action item in the background to do a major revamp of our procedure bylaw, which is out of date. At some point in time, that will come before council, but we're not looking to go and fix up other things in that bylaw that we want to fix up. The changes that are being proposed today are simply confined to what is necessary in order to enable us to have these electronic meetings on a go-forward basis. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the motion that is in front of you, and councillors, and then I will ask for a mover and seconder. Whereas on March 17, 2020, the Premier of Ontario declared a province-wide state of emergency pursuant to Section 7.0.1 Sub 1 of the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act in response to the coronavirus pandemic. And whereas on March 19, 2020, Bill 187, an act to amend the Municipal Act to provide that during emergencies, should they choose to, members of councils, local boards, and committees who participate electronically in open and closed meetings may be counted for purposes of quorum. And that little section is a quote, by the way, from the preamble to the legislation. That legislation was passed by the Ontario government and given royal assent. That's last Wednesday. Or last Thursday, I guess, right? Yeah. And whereas the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby pass bylaw 16-2020 to enable the holding of council. I'm sorry. This is not. There's a mistake in this motion. It should be not. There's not a whereas. There shouldn't be a whereas in front of it. It should be the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby pass bylaw 16-2020 to enable the holding of council, local board, and committee meetings by exclusively electronic means during a state of emergency. Be read a first and second time this 26th day of March 2020, and further, assuming we get through any discussion, and further read a third time, passed and properly signed and sealed this 26th day of March 2020, and numbered 16-2020. All right, so I am looking for a mover and seconder for that motion. Councillors?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Gorman-Matthews moves, seconded by
I'll second it. Joe Lamb.
Councillor Lamb. Thank you very much. It is moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Are you there? Everyone there?
Yes,
Yeah.
I am here. Yes.
Okay, I guess my only question is, so when the province says there's no longer a state of emergency, we can't hold these anymore until and if we declare an emergency. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe that is correct. The provincial legislation makes reference to the two sections of the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act under which emergencies can be declared. And one section it's in Section 4, is the one where basically I get to do it on behalf of the municipality. And the Section 7 one is the one in which the Premier gets to declare it on behalf of the entire province. Or he could declare one on behalf of part but not all of the province, I guess. But in any case, it doesn't matter who declares the emergency, but the provisions of the bylaw, the provisions of the Act that are now in the Municipal Act only apply during emergencies. So somebody has to. You are correct. Somebody has to declare an emergency in order for us to be able to have exclusively electronic meetings. Now, when we get to discussing the sort of longer term rework of our bylaw, I mean, there is a sort of an in-between land that we can go into. Like, it's possible for us to hold a public meeting for open sessions and have people, some people attend in person and a few people call in. That has always been, well, not always, but that has been permitted by the Municipal Act prior to this. The problem that we face now, of course, is a situation where effectively, I mean, the public, in theory, is still entitled to come to an electronic council meeting like today's. The thing is, they can't physically go to our municipal center or our community center because it's closed. And if they did, they wouldn't be able to hear us there anyway. So, you know, but it's always been possible to hold a meeting that one or two people could phone into if our bylaw permitted it. And now it does, and it will on a go-forward basis. But an all-electronic meeting where nobody is physically present, you would not be able to do it if it were not in a state of emergency.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions about the motion? If not, then I will ask the clerk once again to just call the question have a roll call vote to on the motion in front of you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Gorham Matthews.
I'm in favor.
Councillor Lamb.
Yes.
Councillor McEwen.
Yes.
Councillor Woods.
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes. Thank you very much. That motion is passed unanimously, and that allows us to proceed legally on a go-forward basis after today's meeting with similar meetings of this sort. That brings us to item 5 on the agenda, which is an update on the coronavirus situation and related matters, and we will have some discussion about some possible things that we might do as a municipality. Before we do that, what I'd like to do is to get an update on the current situation, and I will ask I will ask our clerk, our CIO clerk, Michelle Hendry, to go first and just touch on one or two of the things that have happened recently that she may be aware of, and then I'm going to ask our Fire Chief, Bob Whitman, to fill us in on, or Kathy Whitman, who's our CEMC, one or both of them to fill us in on the meetings that they have been attending of the emergency management group in West Parry Sound. So, Michelle, if you'd like to go first, and then Bob and or Kathy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The most recent information that I can share, and it's probably something that our CEMC would share as well, is the information I sent to Council this morning with regard to the opening of the assessment center. We were also notified that the first COVID-19 positive response was found in Huntsville, and that was announced at noon. So what we know is that we're still in the middle of a pandemic, and we're still working towards a solution. Just about everything else I would have to say is probably yesterday's news. I can share that I'm the alternate CEMC, so I listened in on a meeting yesterday that our CEMC wasn't able to attend, but our fire chief was there as well, and there was a great deal of talk about regional communication. And we're also going to talk probably later about public communication for the municipality and a mail-out flyer. But that's item 5.1.2, so we'll get to that when we do. And other than that, I don't have any new information to share with Council. Just about, I would say, everything I get from the health unit and other sources, AMCTO or AMO, I forward to Council, and it's usually on the news as well. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll end my report and turn it back to you.
Thank you. Bob or Kathy, do you want to go next, please?
Yes, Mayor, it's Bob, the fire chief. We've been working hard with the other fire departments. We've come up with a program. Hopefully, if the seniors end up being sheltered in place and aren't willing to vote, to hopefully get them groceries, Obies. We've been in contact with the Lions Club, the Agricultural and the Recreation Committee, and they're all on board to helping out with this program. It's actually the Rotary Club who's taken the lead on this, and I spoke to them this morning.
Bob, I don't think you're holding your microphone down or whatever it is you're doing. You're breaking up a bit.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So we've been working hard with the to be able to deliver food to people who can't get out or are a little timid of going out during this pandemic. So we've teamed up with the Lions Club, the local Lions Club here, the Agriculture Society, and the Rec Committee, and we have people that will be willing to go and deliver food if it's picked up either at the Pavilion or at Sobeys in Parry Sound. Help them deliver it. There is a link to Parry Sound's website, which was supposed to be put on our website. I couldn't find it this morning. You can go on that website and put your order in or ask for assistance or whatever you need. As I was saying, the Rotary Club's actually taking the lead on this. We're also looking at teaming up with the nursing station to check on vulnerable people. We've had 2 calls to do that already. It's really well. We're also looking at hooking up with the pharmacies, medication, people who can't get to town or, again, are a little timid of going to town. So hopefully in the next couple of days we'll have that set up to be able to pick up medication in town and deliver it to people who aren't able to get out and get that. So at this time I'll turn it over to our CEMC, Kathy, and she'll explain about the pamphlet she sent out for you to have a look, load in a newsletter to the public.
Hi, it's Kathy. I did stay one night here a little bit later, and I did send some paperwork to Joe. Joe was the one that brought it up to me. Were we on the right track with that, Joe? Is that what you were thinking?
Just don't know.
I'm sorry, I can't. You asked a question, Kathy. I don't know who you were asking, or
Joe Lamb.
I think it was me. Am I on?
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. Kathy sent me something the other day, and I think it was in response to a previous meeting of our emergency task force, where I was mentioning we should get a communication out to local people through a flyer of some sort, and again, I think we're going to talk about this, but Kathy sent it to me, and I was very impressed with it. I don't know whether others have seen it or not, but it's a pretty detailed one sheet of the do's and the don'ts, and a lot of facts about so I was very impressed by it, and thanked Kathy, and then I forwarded on to Michelle. So that was my, part in all this. But yes, it was in my opinion, was a very good communication.
Okay, we will come to that under the next sub-item where we talk about what the things that we think we should do as far as communicating. So if we can just, for the moment, I was just trying to get an update on any new information related to COVID-19 progressing. It hasn't. I guess one of the concerns that has come up in discussion a few times, and it's sort of a good news thing, of course, is that right now, as of the moment, we don't have any known cases of infection in West Parry Sound. The one that was reported earlier is I guess we would call East Parry Sound. So, the Parry Sound Hospital is not dealing with anybody who is sick with this at the moment, to the best of my knowledge. But there is a concern, of course, that this will come to us soon, and our whole healthcare system is, including here in Parry Sound, is preparing for an influx of cases that everyone believes will happen in a few weeks. And some of we have folks who are coming from other parts, either back into the community or deciding to come up here to sort of sequester themselves during this period where everyone's trying to minimize social interaction. And so we're very concerned about getting the right kind of messaging out to people. So, but that will come up. That'll come up under item 5.12. Is there any other new piece of information about the pandemic itself that we need to touch on? If not, I suggest that we move to a discussion of essential services and operations. And once again, what I would do is just to follow the agenda here. So what I would do is turn this over again to our CAO clerk to talk about just to kind of recap where we are in terms of municipal services and what our staff are doing and so on. So Michelle, if you wouldn't mind for a minute, just give everybody an update.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I'd like to do is speak in general terms and then specifically about the office. And if you're agreeable, turn over the Public Works Operations discussion to Brian Sheridan.
Sure.
So the office is closed to the public, and we've had no problems with that at all. People are phoning in; they're still being serviced. Their questions are answered. They're quite often tax related at this time of year, but all the other business that we typically manage, we're able to help people remotely, either by email or simply over the phone. We do have reduced staff in the office for various reasons, people that are off and or contracts that haven't been renewed. So we're trying to reduce the number of folks that actually come in and out of the office. We're working on a couple of arrangements where some folks can work at home part of the time, and we're from a safety perspective, we're keeping everything disinfected and a safe separation. And as of this week, the office will be restricted to just office staff. So the public works people that come in and normally do water testing, that will be done by me going forward. And that's just another safety precaution, so that we're careful as who comes in and out of this very small office area. And we're looking into next week at some other options, but those aren't quite developed yet, and I'll share with council when they are. So at this point, I think Mr. Sheridan can tell you what's happening with landfill facilities and with the roads group.
Okay, thank you. Brian?
Yeah, can you hear me, Your Worship?
Yes, we can.
Great. Presently, we have been trying to keep the roads in as passable a condition as we can. We're still waiting, actually, for the frost to come out of the bed. But mostly, I think our roads are in good condition. The 2 landfills are still open, and discussions with the landfill staff this morning suggest that the public who are attending and coming to the landfills are expressing appreciation for the fact that that is still occurring and ongoing. We have an unusual number of cottagers present in the community at this point, certainly more than last year, and increasingly, I think, as I get the sense from the staff at the landfills, with folks who are visiting the landfills. So it's become an important facility for the people who are here, and increasing numbers are coming up to our community. That raises the other elements of concerns, but not really with the landfills. Staff have been set up with protocols for their protection and their safety, as well as the safety of the public that they're dealing with, and it seems to be working really quite well. Additionally, the public works staff down at the shop are preparing the steps for the next stages of the season. We're right at the point where all of our roads transition from winter to spring. So they have been very busy trying to work on those surfaces and keep things as passable and safe for the public as we can. Essentially, that's been our work in the last week.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions from council on either of these reports? Okay, I guess if you councilors, if you think of something while we're still on this item, you can you can always weigh in and ask it. So I guess my conclusion from what I heard is that we are going to continue to the current service level is going to continue for the foreseeable future, and we're not being asked by our staff to change anything as far as landfill or roads or any of those things are concerned. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, Your Worship.
Mr. Mayor, right. Mr. Mayor, could I ask a question? Joe McEwen?
Absolutely.
Of Mr. Sheridan. If numbers increase at the landfill, and if there's any potential issue of too much nearness and too much traffic, should we entertain some sort of notice of necessary dump service or I guess what I'm trying to say is ask people to only come with necessary needs to the landfill. Any comment on that, Brian?
Through your worship, we don't have an overloading situation at this point. That can occur in the future, and depending on how this entire situation develops, we may want to consider changes to the operation and opening of our sites. At present, there doesn't really appear to be a need for that, so we will continue to monitor and we'll move forward with the CAO in terms of bringing things to council if need seems or is apparent to change for happening.
Okay, thanks, Brian. I appreciate your concern.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to item 5.12, which is public communication and the May newsletter options. Normally speaking, we would be issuing a May newsletter, and that gets as you know, mailed to people. We have communications. Our other main communications vehicles that we have in the municipality, other than public signage, which is, as you know, is pretty limited. We have the municipality's Facebook page and the municipality's and the website itself. And what we've been doing with those is trying to post information that we think is important for the public to receive about the situation in general and about things that are specific to Whitestone in terms of our response. There is a little bit of a delay doing that because we're still, as some of you know, we are in the process of updating our website, but this is a long process, and the new one is a ways off yet, and so we are still using the one which is a bit cumbersome to update. But we do have arrangements for it to be updated, and whatever council wishes to be posted will end up on those two sites. There is also on those two, the website and the Facebook page. There is also, and this, Bob Whitman alluded to this earlier, the municipalities in West Parry Sound agreed that the Parry Sound, the town of Parry Sound's website would be sort of a master repository for all background information about the COVID-19 in West Parry Sound, and so you will find that anything that would, other than things that are specific to Whitestone, all of the general information would be there, and information about the new testing facility and these various other things, that's all going up on that website. So we will probably, in our material, we refer people to that website also for sort of more general information that comes from the health unit or from the West Parry Sound Health Center or other sources like that. So our major concern is things that are specific to Whitestone, and I guess there has been a little bit of discussion offline, and people have raised some questions about whether there are other things that we should do. We wanted to make sure that there's a general level of confidence that people in the community know what's going on and know, for example, what they should do if they don't feel well, or if they think they need to be tested, or if they just have a concern about whether they might be getting sick, or whether they got access to other medical services that they need that are not related to COVID-19 and all of those kinds of things. So I guess I'm putting out for discussion whether whether people feel that there's a need for us to do, for example, a local mailing in the community, or to to put to try and put out some other particular messaging. So I'm going to open the floor to the council to weigh in on any concerns or suggestions that you might have about the subject of communications. And I say to council, I'll ask if our CAO clerk has any comments about that too.
I could perhaps start off, Mr. Mayor. I am, as you know, this would be the time of year where we actually start our May newsletter, and the normal things we would put in the newsletter probably won't have context by the time it is published. So, my opinion is we wouldn't move forward with the May newsletter as we normally would, but certainly a public communication, and as Councillor Lamb suggested, the Kathy Whitman forwarded a sample document. On one side is some very good information, the typical information we're seeing on all sorts of websites, but it wouldn't hurt to have that delivered to people's homes so they have a hard copy of it. And on the back of that document is an opportunity for a reassuring message from the mayor, perhaps, with a little bit more information and about what Whitestone is doing to make sure that the residents are safe. So those are my thoughts. I've had some emails back and forth with Kathy Whitman, and I know she's been busy, and I'm glad to know she's in the next room, so I'll be able to talk to her after the meeting is over about the communication and a few other things. So those are my thoughts on the communication at this point. Oh, I did want to say something else. We've had a few technical difficulties with our website and Facebook, but that will be resolved at today, this afternoon. So you'll start to see postings up there, certainly more frequently, with all the information that's on the Parry Sound website, some information that's unique to Whitestone, and maybe some more words of reassurance and information on our services and that kind of thing, so our residents know that we're still here to help them. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. You were trying to get in there a minute ago.
Well, no, yeah, that's fine. I wholeheartedly agree with Michelle and Kathy's communication. And I think there's a number of things, Mr. Mayor, that we've discussed that can be put in your message about the testing center and all the things we're talking about. We need to do that. My observations are, first of all, back to Brian saying more people are up. More people are up, on the lake here that I'm on, and someone actually FaceTimed me 2 or 3 days ago, and there were 8 people out in front of my house on the ice, but they were all practicing social distancing, right? And but there are others in the community that not just our community, but I'm sure most communities still just don't get it. There are people, I have no names, but there are people that are still making their trip to Parry Sound and wandering around Canadian Tire and Home Depot and the grocery store and everything else, and they somehow think that, this isn't going to hit us. We're up here, right? Well, Kath and I are self-isolating, so, we haven't had anything to do with anyone for several days, and we're doing that for our own safety. And I guess I would also point out that we have obviously a lot of seniors in our communities who seem to be the most at risk if they have underlying conditions. So I wholeheartedly support kind of caution, telling them what we're doing, informing them the landfills are open now, but we may have to make a different decision on that. Telling them, all the things that we've discussed. And I think that high-level sort of communication, should go out. We can do it by way of a flyer, which is relatively economical. We all did it during the election, send out our flyers. So, and I don't think that we need to do a mass mailing to all the seasonal people. I'm sure they're inundated with things, and I think if they come up, we should post it like at the landfill sites and at the office and other things. But I think there's no need for a mass sort of thing at this point. As far as the newsletter is concerned, I think that's that's a moving target. I mean, we don't have to do it in May, but we once we pass the budget, whatever that is, and this thing sort of at least moves forward over the next 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, we can always decide that the newsletter is June 1st or whatever, so I wholeheartedly support a communication to our people. The only other comment I'd make is, of course, we haven't got a case in West Parry Sound, but I'd point out we haven't had testing in West Parry Sound, right? So, and to think for a moment that this isn't going to hit our community and up here, whether it's 2 or 4 weeks from now is a bit naive. It is going to hit our community. It's just how many and when. So anyway, those are generally my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lamb. Any other comments or suggestions?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Joe, could I speak momentarily?
Go ahead.
Yes, I agree 100% with what's been said. Councillor Lamb summed it up quite nicely. I think that people maybe don't sense that there's such a seriousness maybe in this area, and the potential is certainly there. I had mentioned too, just by way of email, maybe you never received it today, but I've had a couple comments from people who suggested that maybe we do a little welcoming thing, maybe on our signboard at the community center, and just ask people to, observe the rules, save COVID-19, to make it friendly and welcoming to everyone coming into the area, residents, permanent, seasonals, everybody. So that was just one little thought that came to mind after talking to, suggested by a seasonal person actually. I guess the other thing we should consider a little bit more, and that's the landfill. Our committee has proceeded through with our biweekly meetings to come up with some flyer information type guidance for people to do with plastics and recycling, etc. I guess the hope at one point was to, and I guess from council also, maybe the direction was to put it with a newsletter going out in May. I can see some changes coming which would prevent going a long ways along with this. But I think there's a little bit of confusion out in the public, in the community right now between, say, year-round or just residential, say not year-round, residential and or businesses as to what we're going to allow into the landfill. I know we put out a bit of information, which was good information with the last newsletter. And I think there's a little bit of confusion, especially where brush is concerned, for one thing, because we state on there that it can only be received at Alls. And there's been no real definition of how much and what and all that kind of stuff. So I guess I'd like council to give us a direction as to whether we should just kind of halt this venture right now, or just try to get out some very basic information for people just moving forward for the next couple of months. Just want to make sure people are not left in a lurch over this landfill stuff that's going on.
Okay, thank you for that. You were kind of opening it to council in terms of direction. I don't know if there are any other other opinions around this subject before I comment.
Yeah, well, I'll comment and not to preempt others, but I kind of agree. We've asked them to, there's a lot of sort of changes that we sent out in the newsletter. It might get even more confusing if we sort of, delay it. In terms of the brush, it's everyone usually gets one free load in a ticket or whatever that we send out every year. And after that, they pay $7. So I see no difference. We don't have to send the ticket out. Sort of, we probably, in subject to Brian, they can probably be allowed one free load of brush. And after that, just collect the $7.50 or whatever it is. I still agree that people are, that they take it to alls. We can fill up, York Street really quick with just brush, and people won't like it no matter whether we're going through a pandemic or not. There'll be an adjustment period, but so I don't, and I'd hate to change some of the other things like tires and the other decisions we made. So I hear, Councillor McEwen, exactly what you're saying. It's a difficult time, but I don't think we have to make I think we've made the basic decisions as to what we want to do, and for the most part, people are going to adhere to it. But you're going to get, in good times or bad times, people say, I want to bring my brush to York Street, and what are you guys doing? We're going to get that anyway. But those are generally sort of my thoughts. If Brian or Michelle as staff want to, I rely on the two of them to give us recommendations. I'm just giving observations. So thank you.
Okay, Michelle or Brian, do you have any comments that you want to make at this point about the issue of the changes at the landfill?
This is CEO Hendry. I'll defer to Brian Sheridan. I haven't been part of the meetings. I know that as of April 1st, notwithstanding the situation we're in, there was an intent to create some flyers that just provided the information on the 4 new things that were happening: the tires, the brush, the boats, and I believe the C&D. That's right, and contact our contractors. So these would be handed out by the landfill attendants to people who needed to know the information. Now, I know there's other information that we want to give in terms of recycling. But other than that, I haven't been part of the meeting, so I will sort of defer to Brian Sheridan. He's probably given it more thought than I have at this point.
Thank you, Michelle. Through you, Your Worship. Certainly there's some really good discussions happening with the task force, and I think we're developing some plans for some very good move-forward situations. The implementation is, of course, always the challenge for both staff and council, and I think that the implementation step-by-step will be what's most important, so we have to be cautious about that. We are moving forward with some definitions. I think the flyer going out and things that will go from staff to the public on an information and education basis will be the most meaningful first step, and we plan to try and implement on a, let's call it a cautionary basis, so that we are educating and informing people on the steps and the measures coming forward with enforcement an absolute last step. But there are things that we need to do in the short term with respect to what was directed by council, and those are being done in a very measured way, I think, with the committee in terms of planning for those steps to move forward.
Okay, thank you for that, Brian. If I can just kind of summarize where I think we are on this item before we move to the next one. I believe that we should stay the course with the recommendations that have already been approved as far as landfill is concerned, and we should add that to our communications. I don't think that it's, I don't think that the current pandemic situation really makes a case for suspending any of what council has already decided, and really the challenge for us is to simply continue to do what we can to communicate the changes to folks, and there will undoubtedly be a little bit of confusion and by people who aren't quite sure what the changes actually mean or how it affects them, but I guess I don't see a reason to postpone that till later on. We might as well, get that through that sooner rather than later while we have a smaller number of people using the landfill. And it'll be an ongoing process as more folks return to the community on towards summertime and so on. So I think we should stay the course. We do need to beef up our communications. The sense I'm getting from the earlier discussion is that we will probably put the May newsletter on hold, but we will look at trying to do some more timely local communications. And we can certainly look at every possible way that we have to get to communicate to folks what is expected of them in this particular situation, and we'll continue to try to make sure that our social media postings are up to date with everything that's happening. So, just in the interest of moving along, I'd like to move then to item 5.1.3, which is to have a brief discussion around the subject of possibly deferring interest and penalties on unpaid taxes. I should just mention to everybody that we have had inquiries from a few of our residents who are saying basically, do you plan to do something similar to what some other municipal governments and some other levels of government have done with respect to postponing either postponing when taxes are due, or as you probably know, we all have extended time to file our federal income tax returns and to pay any taxes that are owing. That's I don't know that's on the table, but there are some folks who have come and said to us, as far as Whitestone is concerned, is there, if I have difficulty making a tax payment, and there's a tax payment due today, as you probably know, the first installment of the 2020 taxes due today. If they are suffering from reduced income because of this virus, because of the pandemic, then are you going to cut them some slack on perhaps on penalties and interest and that sort of thing if they're not able to pay because they need whatever funds they have for other more pressing things? So that was the purpose of this discussion. I'll see what I guess what I was going to propose when we get there. I do have a motion that council could consider if you'd like, and the motion basically is to defer penalties and interest on, and I'm talking about on 2020 taxes, not on past arrears, but on 2020 taxes that would be due today until the next tax payment date, the next installment, which is due on May the 28th, so that would be a 2-month grace period, if you like, in which we would simply not charge penalties and interest. So I'm putting that out to you without just as an idea of something that we could consider doing that might help some of our folks who are suffering economically from the current situation. So that's the sort of thing. But I'd sort of like to get a sense of where what the rest of council feels about this this kind of an idea whether we should do any changes. And if you have questions about the potential impact of doing various things, our treasurer, Pat Allen, is on the phone and she can answer. I gave her a heads up that we'd be talking about this, so she can answer questions for you in terms of, if you have any, in terms of what the impact would be of doing that on the municipality. So I'll open it up.
May I speak, Mr. Mayor?
Who is it?
It's Beth. Councillor Gore-Matthews.
Oh, Beth, I'm sorry. Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I didn't.
I'm fully in support of this as long as it doesn't leave us in a situation where we're short of funds to do our projects. But I would suggest that 2 months isn't long enough to defer the penalties and interest. In the most realistic situation, we're probably looking at an economic recovery of closer to 4 to 6 months. So I'm kind of thinking more towards the end of summer, like when the next set of taxes would be to defer the interest and penalties, just because this is probably going to take a lot longer than what any of us are ever going to anticipate.
Okay, thank you. Other comments?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, do you read?
Yep. Go ahead. I think you muted yourself, Joe.
Am I back?
You're back.
Okay, sorry, folks. Yes, I agree with Beth. I'm sensing that the recovery for folks on this is going to be more than 2 months, especially people with business options and employment options and the whole kicker. I don't know how the rest of the council feel, but I would probably support going out at least 2 months and probably 4 months on this. I'd like to know what the impact would be coming from our treasurer, if I could, please.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Pat, if you'd like to respond, please.
Yes, it's Pat here. We currently run penalty and interest, say, the first or second day of the month following. It's set at 1.25%, and that's regulation. We make about we earn about $4,000 to $4,200 a month on that interest. Currently, on the interim billings, we've collected approximately 68, almost 69% of the interim billing. But there'll be some dribble-drabble in until the beginning of next week. So I'm fairly confident we should be up to about 75% of the interim billing.
Okay. Does everybody sorry, Pat, before you go on, does everybody understand what that means? That means that 75% of the taxes that were due today have already come in, or will have already come in when the dust settles on, say, Monday or this coming Monday. So
yes, we do tend to leave it open for a few days so we can pick up those last few minute stragglers. Plus, we are ramping up on the online payments. So they come today, but we don't get the notification until the next day, possibly the day after. So we do leave it open for a few days so we can get everybody in that we possibly can.
Leaving conference.
Brian Sheridan.
Bye, Brian.
Goodbye, Brian.
From there, we have had a few phone calls, maybe a handful, asking if there's been any announcements and they're not asking about penalty and interest, like they're asking about to defer the payment. So the response has been there's no decision as of yet. I've only heard from one other municipality, that was Strong Township, and they are publicly announcing that they are waiving the interest for March, but I haven't heard anything other than that.
So I guess, am I on? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Lamb.
Go ahead.
I'm a little stunned that in all my years on council, I never knew that. So actually, over is it normal that 1/4 of people don't pay their taxes within and start to incur interest? I'm stunned by that, but I'm not questioning it. I'm just stunned that in normal times that amount of people are late on their payment. Is that am I reading that right? And then I have a question after that.
I think a lot of people leave it to the very last day, but if you're doing online, we do not get notification until the day after.
Okay, but I think you're saying when you close it off, you expect it to be at 75%. I'm just not to belabor it, but I'm just a little stunned that 25% of people don't pay their taxes on time, right? So,
no, I think this year, our bank balance is a little bit higher this year versus last year, but I think this year it is starting to slow down on the payments because of the climate right now.
Okay. So I guess my comment, and Beth, I hear what you're saying. I don't doubt that this is going to go on further, but I guess my position, for what it's worth, is that this is an incremental thing. Just as we're going to look at the landfill site as going on, we can say we forgive interest on this particular payment for 2 months, and we can always make a decision a month from now to then take that the end of May date to August or whatever. But so I'm basically in agreement, but I don't think we have to say right now you don't have to make your payments until for this year until August, right? I think that's a leap that I think is questionable. And again, we may exactly need to do that. Also, I guess my comment is, hopefully we're not going to have people say, well, send me my money back, I'll pay you in August, right? I want my money back. Hopefully we're not going to entertain any of that. If you paid, you paid. And because you might run into that if you extend it out to August, right? People say, I want my money back, right? And so anyway, those are generally my comments. I'll support whatever the majority of council is, but I think the best position is to do 2 months now and be prepared to extend it out depending on the situation a month or 6 weeks from now. But anyway, those are generally my thoughts on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments?
Mr. Mayor, am I still open?
You're still open.
The 15 to 25% who don't get taxes paid on time doesn't really surprise me. I think it's representative of the low-income folks that we have living out in these municipalities, of which there are many, and I think those people are the ones who are really hurting at this point when they have to go for EI, and they're only claiming EI on very basic incomes. And any little assistance we can give them, if it's psychological as well as a few bucks in their pocket, I think it's probably a good move at this time. To defer, I don't really agree with either. I think if we can extend a period of interest-free, that would give them relief. I guess it's deferring it as well. However, that's up to the individual situation. But I still think 2 to 4 months would be more appropriate than just 2 months under the circumstances. Thank you.
I guess, Mr. Mayor, I don't want Councillor McEwen to misunderstand. I don't want them to be charged any interest if we decide to go out to the end of May. It's just, I'm saying without interest or penalty or whatever. I wasn't trying. If I gave the impression that, anyway, my suggestion of 2 months was without interest or penalty. So anyway, thank you.
Well, thank you for that. Is there? I should ask one more time if there's anyone. Well, actually, you'll have an opportunity to speak one more time anyway. What I think I'd like to do, if I can, is read a suggested motion to you that I prepared, just thinking that we might end up doing this. and I'll see if I can get a mover and seconder for it, and then we can just have one more go around in case anybody wants to tweak it or amend it or whatever. But here's the motion that I'm looking for: that the municipality of Whitestone hereby waives penalties and interest on the first installment of unpaid 2020 municipal taxes due March 26, 2020, that's today, until the second installment is due on May 28, 2020. And then we'd add a second sentence which says this waiver does not apply to unpaid municipal taxes that were due prior to March 26, 2020. In other words, if you were already in arrears from before, I'm suggesting that we not the penalties and interest that you may have already accrued from, well, and it would be from the previous taxation year, right? Mm-hmm. We shouldn't apply that to that. So this is simply an opportunity for people who are in a position of hardship to, and what they will do is they will. It applies to people who haven't paid their taxes. They're going to decide not to pay them for the time being, and they're still going to owe them. But they're not going to, so we're not waiving the taxes, we're waiving penalty and interest. So they would then have a 2-month period, which has already been pointed out, could be extended if we see in 2 months' time, if we see that the situation still warrants it. But they can defer the payment for some period of time until they're perhaps in a better situation, and it won't cost them penalties and interest, which would effectively start, say, Monday of next week if they don't pay. So anyway, again, I'll read it. That the municipality of Whitestone hereby waives penalties and interest on the first installment of unpaid 2020 municipal taxes due March 26, 2020, until the second installment is due on May 28, 2020. This waiver does not apply to unpaid municipal taxes that were due prior to March 26, 2020. Is there a mover and seconder for that?
I'll move it.
So that is Councillor
Lamb.
Councillor Lamb, sorry.
Councillor Woods, second.
Seconded by Councillor Woods. All right. Is there any further discussion about that motion? Okay. Well, I am not hearing anything. So, if I could ask our clerk to then just do the roll call vote, please.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Joe?
If I may, please. Could I ask that we would alter that to have a further review at May 28th, but before May 28th?
So you would like to add to the motion that the matter will be reviewed prior to May 28th?
Yes, and that would be it for the next 2 months if necessary.
All right, to be reviewed. Okay, 28.
Wish of the movers on that motion.
Yeah, I should ask. This is kind of like a friendly amendment, which the parliamentary procedure people say it doesn't exist. But if the mover is okay with that, we can do it. Because I'm making a note here.
Am I on? I think I am.
Yes, you're on.
Sorry. Yeah, I agree with that.
Councillor Wood, seconder, are you okay with that?
I'm definitely okay with that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. All right, I will go back to the vote then. Would you like to read the names, Madam CAO?
Yes, thank you.
Clerk?
Councillor Gorham Matthews,
Yes, I'm in favor.
Councillor Lamb,
I'm in favor.
Councillor McEwen,
Yes, I'm in favor.
Councillor Woods,
Yes, I'm in favor.
Mayor Comrie.
I'm in favor. Thank you. That motion is carried. And we will communicate to this information to folks. There have been a few who are, I think, who've asked about it and are waiting for an answer, and we'll get a notice up of this to hopefully in time for anybody that's holding back. We'll try to do it as quickly as we can. So thank you very much for that.
Mr. Mayor, I think we should also point that out in the message that you're going to send out with the flyer. That should be a dot point. That should be a dot point along with everything else, right?
Okay, thank you for that suggestion. Okay, we are, unless there are any other items that councillors wish to raise about, about what we've been talking about related to COVID-19. We are at item number 6, which was questions from the public, and to my recollection, there were only 2 members of the public who indicated that they had joined us on the call today. But I'll just open it up for a minute before we adjourn to our closed session. I will ask if there are any other comments or questions that people have that they would like to raise, including our members of the public. Going once. Okay. Well, thank you very much for bearing with us while we while we do this by virtual meeting. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn to a closed session. Mover and seconder, please.
I'll move.
So I heard Councillor Gorham Matthews second, but I didn't get who was moving.
Councillor Woods.
Councillor Woods. Thank you very much. I guess we don't need to debate this. Be it resolved that the meeting be adjourned at, I'm showing, we'll say 2:55 p.m., and that a closed meeting be convened subject to Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act for the following matters: personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees, with the members of council and the CAO clerk present. So I'll call the question on this. All those in favor, or all the, sorry, I guess, Madam Clerk, I better get you to do your thing again here, and I'll capture it.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Leaving conference.
Patricia Allen.
Councillor Gorham Matthews,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor McEwen,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes? Did you get Councillor Woods?
Oh, did I miss Councillor Woods? I apologize. Councillor Woods?
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The meeting is, the open session is now adjourned, and what I'm going to ask everybody to do, and this is simply to avoid the situation where some member of the public might be listening in or whatever, or might try to dial in. I'm going to ask everybody to hang up and call back the same number that you called before, but with a different teleconference number, which you were supplied yesterday by the deputy clerk.
Judy and Larry.
So
Mr. Mayor,
Leaving conference.
Go ahead.
I
Leaving conference.
Bob Whitman, Fire Chief.
Yeah, I
Go
don't
ahead.
know that. I don't know that I received an email. If someone could give me I'll look through my emails, but I want to make sure I have a code.
Could I ask Judy or the clerk to just call Councillor Lamb on his cell phone and give him the code, please?
I also need a code, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Wood.
It's CAO Hendry. Shall I resend the email? We'll take a 5-minute break if that's agreeable to everyone, and I'll resend the email code to everyone. Does that work? Or is the phone call better?
Yes, as far as no, it's fine with me. I just don't know what the code is to get back in.
Yeah.
So.
Has everybody got access to email who doesn't already know the code? Does that work?
I have
Yes.
the code. I'm fine.
Okay, and Councillor McEwen, you have the or maybe he's gone already. No?
Maybe he has the code. So. Anyway,
Okay, all right. So try sending it out, and if you don't get the code, then you can phone the
Leaving conference.
you can phone the CAO clerk.
Roger Lafreniere.
Yeah.
Leaving conference.
Who was that? Oh. No, but I just heard somebody and Roger.
Sounded like Judy Rogers or something, but I don't know.
It was the Lafreniers. They were on the line.
Well,
Oh, okay,
why
but they didn't tell us.
No, George is right. But what?
Oh, well.
It doesn't matter. They could come into they could come into a council meeting and leave, right?
That's true.
That's the way it works. But maybe they joined later on. So anyway, okay. I'll await the email with the confirmation number, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Okay, we'll be back on in 5 minutes.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. Bye now.
Thank you.
Leaving conference.